Imagine waking up to a world without borders, no checkpoints, no passports, no nations defining where you can or cannot go. The lines that once carved the planet into separate identities have vanished. You step outside and nothing feels different, yet everything has changed. For centuries, borders have shaped civilizations, economies, and conflicts. They have dictated where people are born, where they can work, and even who they can become. But what if these barriers, once thought essential, were no longer there? Would humanity finally unite under a single borderless world? Or would it unravel into chaos? A world without borders is more than just an idea. It's a growing possibility. Economic unions expand. Digital currencies transcend national control, and technology dissolves the need for physical limitations. Some argue that erasing borders would unlock untapped human potential. Imagine the ease of free movement, where talent flows without restriction. Industries thrive on a global scale, and innovation flourishes without bureaucratic red tape. No more visa applications, no more refugee crises, no more wars fought over territory. It's an appealing vision, a world where resources are shared, opportunities are universal, and cooperation replaces division. A place where humanity finally sees itself as one, rather than fragmented by invisible lines on a map. Could this be the next stage of civilization's evolution? But what happens when ideals collide with reality? Would nations willingly relinquish control? Could economies sustain open migration? And what of security? Who would enforce laws in a world where borders no longer exist? The idea of a borderless world challenges not just political systems, but the very nature of identity itself. If national borders disappear, do cultures dissolve with them? Or do new invisible barriers take their place? Are borders truly necessary for stability? Or are they just artificial constraints limiting human progress? A world without borders promises a future of endless possibilities. No more lines drawn by history. No more passports defining where you belong. In this vision, humanity moves freely, unrestricted by artificial divisions. Imagine the potential, a global workforce, unrestricted by nationality, ideas flowing without obstruction, and societies embracing diversity on an unprecedented scale. Economically, the advantages seem undeniable. Labor shortages become a thing of the past, as skilled workers migrate effortlessly to where they're needed most. Industries thrive, powered by an unchained exchange of talent and resources. Developing nations gain access to expertise, accelerating progress and reducing inequality. Without tariffs or trade barriers, businesses expand seamlessly, creating a truly interconnected market. And what about culture? Without borders, the world becomes a vast shared canvas of traditions, knowledge, and collaboration. The concept of nationality begins to blur, replaced by a new form of identity, one that transcends geography. Cities become microcosms of the world, blending languages, customs, and perspectives in ways never seen before. A person born in one country, educated in another, and working across continents is no longer an exception but the norm. Beyond the economy and culture, there's the question of governance. Could nations evolve into a unified global system, one that prioritizes cooperation over conflict? Instead of armies defending territorial lines, resources could be pooled to solve global challenges: climate change, poverty, disease. With the barriers of nationalism removed, could humanity finally act as a single collective force? But beneath this optimism lies an undeniable truth. Systems built on centuries of division do not disappear overnight. If national borders no longer exist, who ensures order? Who enforces laws? And would everyone truly benefit equally? Or would new forms of inequality emerge in their place? This vision of a borderless world is compelling, but is it sustainable? What happens when the ideals of freedom and unity collide with the realities of human nature? But reality is rarely as simple as an ideal. A world without borders may offer freedom, but it also presents challenges, unpredictable, far-reaching, and deeply unsettling. What happens when the movement of people, once controlled by governments, becomes unrestricted? How do societies adapt when the rules they've relied on for centuries no longer apply? The first and most immediate concern is economic stability. If people can move anywhere, what stops wealthier nations from being overwhelmed by those seeking a better life? Infrastructure, already strained in many parts of the world, could collapse under the weight of sudden, unchecked migration. Housing shortages, overcrowded healthcare systems, and unemployment spikes could create instability, even in the most prosperous regions. Then there's governance. Without national borders, who enforces laws? A crime committed in one place could be easily escaped by simply moving to another. Would a global police force emerge? Or would individual communities take matters into their own hands, leading to fragmented, inconsistent justice systems? The disappearance of borders doesn't mean the disappearance of power. In fact, it could shift control from governments to corporations, private entities, or decentralized digital systems, none of which are accountable to the people in the way democratic nations are today. Security is another dilemma. Without borders, what happens to national defense? If traditional militaries become obsolete, who ensures peace? Some argue that a borderless world would eliminate the very reasons for war. After all, there's nothing left to fight over. But history tells a different story. Conflict isn't just about land. It's about resources, ideology, and power. Would we see new forms of warfare emerge? Cyber conflicts, economic coercion, or even AI-driven disputes replacing traditional battlegrounds? And beneath all of this, there's an even deeper, more personal question. What happens to identity? Nationality has long been a defining part of who we are. Without borders, do cultures blend seamlessly? Or do they struggle to preserve themselves? Does a shared human identity emerge? Or do people cling even tighter to old divisions, tribes, religions, ideologies? A borderless world promises freedom, but could it also create new forms of division? If borders disappear, do we truly unite? Or do we simply find new ways to separate ourselves? If borders disappear, the way we organize society must be reimagined. Governments, once defined by territorial control, would need to adapt or risk becoming obsolete. Would power shift toward a global authority capable of managing a borderless world? Or would governance fragment, with cities, regions, or even digital communities forming their own independent systems? Some believe a decentralized model would emerge, where individuals choose their affiliations, rather than being bound by birthright. Digital citizenships, blockchain-based governance, and voluntary social contracts could replace the rigid structures of the past. Technology might enable a new form of order, where identity and participation are fluid, no longer tied to geography. But would such a system truly serve everyone? Or would it deepen inequality, dividing those with access from those without? The economic consequences would be just as profound. In theory, open borders create an environment where competition drives innovation and prosperity. But in practice, the sudden redistribution of labor and resources could destabilize industries. Wealthy regions might struggle to manage the influx of workers, while developing areas risk being drained of talent. Would a global minimum wage be necessary? A universal social safety net? Could economic systems built on scarcity and competition transition to a model of abundance and shared prosperity? Even the very concept of security would need to evolve. Without borders, traditional law enforcement could become ineffective. A global surveillance network might emerge, monitoring movement, transactions, and behaviors in ways that challenge personal freedoms. Would this create a safer world, or an era of unprecedented control? If borders once protected sovereignty, what would replace them in safeguarding rights and autonomy? These questions have no simple answers. A world without borders could be the foundation for a united, thriving civilization, or an experiment in chaos. The path forward would depend not just on policy and infrastructure, but on human nature itself. Are we truly ready for a borderless world, or are we bound to the divisions we've created? The idea of a world without borders challenges everything we know about society, identity, and governance. It forces us to question not just the systems we live under, but the way we see ourselves. Are borders a relic of the past holding us back from progress, or are they necessary structures maintaining order? In an unpredictable world, history has shown that radical change often brings both promise and peril. The collapse of empires, the rise of globalization, the digital revolution, each transformed civilization in ways that were both liberating and destabilizing. A borderless world would be no different. Some would thrive in newfound freedom, while others might struggle with displacement, uncertainty, and a loss of belonging. Technology may hold the key to managing this transition, but even the most advanced systems cannot override human nature. If borders disappear, do our divisions truly vanish? Or do we simply redraw them in new ways? Economic class, ideology, digital access? The disappearance of physical barriers does not guarantee unity. Perhaps the real question is not whether a borderless world is possible, but whether we are ready for it. Are we prepared to rethink governance, redefine security, and reimagine what it means to belong? Are we willing to embrace the unknown, knowing that progress is never without risk? The future remains unwritten. The choice is not whether a world without borders will emerge, but what kind of world we choose to build. If given the chance, Would we step forward into the unknown, or retreat into the safety of the familiar? This video has come to an end, but the discovery continues. Check out more content on the channel and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Thank you for watching.